Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Pre-Dental Universe. We have an exciting session today with Dr. Vallo. He's going to be sharing with us his journey on how he opened his recent practice in Tampa, Florida, and he'll end it with sharing some of the clinical cases as well as taking all of your questions. And please feel free to take it away whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sherry. I'm honored to be here, guys. I was in all of your shoes. I remember going to many lectures and luncheons and dinners in college and dental school, learning from dentists, and it's really cool to be able to come here and talk to you guys tonight. Um, I am in a lecture both clinically and also about starting a dental practice and a little bit about my journey. I'm actually going to start with the clinical side. And what I have chosen for my lecture tonight is actually, oh, wait, I guess we'll start with my background. All right, guys. So I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's where I grew up. And actually, that's how I got my start in dentistry. When I was a freshman in high school, I did a summer temp in an orthodontics office and just like absolutely loved it there. The orthodontist loved his job. He was always in a good mood, laughing and joking. The kids were so happy there. They had video games for them to play in the lobby, and the parents were just so appreciative. So I always knew I wanted to go into like the health sciences. I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to go. And once I did that temp, I was dead set on going to dental school. So I kind of laser focused on it and kind of set the rest of my path from there. I am a big Steelers fan, so I'm still kind of mourning that loss from a few weeks ago. I went to undergrad at Michigan State. I studied nutritional sciences there. Again, from the start, I knew I wanted to go to dental school, and I was just interested in nutrition. And it does play a big role in our dental health. So it's pretty background as well. I went to dental school at Ohio State. I know many of you are kind of in the process of looking at dental schools, interviewing for dental schools. And I guess, why did I choose Ohio State? Frankly, I applied to about 15 schools. Dental school is very competitive. I think I interviewed at maybe 6 or 7 of them, and I got into, I think, 4. So of the 4 I got into, Ohio State just made the most sense. Being from Pittsburgh, it was fairly close to home, and it was a really good choice. It's a great school. So after dental school, what was my path? So I went right into public health, actually. I spent the next 3 years after dental school being able to serve the underserved populations and provide dental care. It was really cool. Some of the most appreciative people I've ever met. And it was a good way to kind of get my feet wet and really get a lot of practice clinically after dental school. So from there, I moved to Tampa, Florida with my fiance. We were sick of living in the snow belt and wanted to get closer to the beach. And so when I moved here, I actually almost bought a practice right away, but I ended up becoming an associate instead. And so I've been an associate down here in a higher end kind of practice, and also in a more insurance driven practice. And now I'm getting ready to open my brand new startup dental practice, which is pretty cool. All right, so we'll get into the clinical side for tonight. And the topic I chose is actually endodontics. While I like a lot of the cosmetic ends of dentistry, I also enjoy the whole spectrum of general dentistry, and being able to provide this service for my patients is really cool. It's nice when you can help keep them from having to go to specialists for every procedure, and endodontics is one of those procedures that I like to do. So, all right. So, what is a root canal? Endo is the Greek word for inside, and odont is the Greek word for tooth. So, endodontic treatment treats the inside of the tooth. Root canals involve removing infected pulp tissue and then cleaning, disinfecting, and shaping the canals. A special sealer and filling material are then placed to prevent future bacterial invasion. And so looking at the picture here, we've got a cavity that's infiltrated the hard outer enamel. It's gotten through the inner dentin layer. This is the pulp chamber, kind of the big portion of the nerve. And once that pulp is infected with the cavity, all of the nerve canals are infected as well. So they need to be cleaned out. Let's go over some root canal myths. Myth number 1, it's gonna hurt. The truth is that patients typically experience less sensation during a root canal than they do during an extraction. The post-op recovery is also usually easier. Myth number 2, root canals make me sick. The truth is there is actually no valid scientific evidence linking root canal treatment to disease elsewhere in the body. Much of this myth actually stems from disproven, poorly designed research conducted nearly 100 years ago. Myth number 3, root canals always fail, so why would I get one? The truth is that while previous root canal treatments can fail, they often last a long time and sometimes even a lifetime. So the 2 most important factors to longevity with endo treatment are completing the root canal as soon as possible following diagnosis, because chronic infections can decrease the likelihood of a successful outcome. Having the permanent restoration and crown completed at the time or soon after the root canal is done. And regularly scheduled dental cleanings and exams. All right, canals are like a box of chocolates. So the number of nerve canals varies by tooth, and some very general rules of thumb are anterior or front teeth typically have 1 canal. Upper premolars can have either 1 or 2 canals, and lower premolars typically have 1 canal. Molars usually have at least 3 canals. Sometimes they can have 4, sometimes they even have 5. And that table just kind of shows what I was just talking about there. It all starts with that darn dam. So rubber dams are the standard of care when it comes to endodontic procedures. I personally like the Relax Fit Insti-Dam, which comes pre-assembled with disposable frame. It's more comfortable for the patient, and typically x-rays can actually be taken with the dam in place. There's probably other brands that are very similar. That's just the one that I use. Clamp it up. All right, so the clamp is what holds the rubber dam in place. And we tie a piece of floss through one end of the hole on the clamp. And this way, if it gets dislodged and falls towards the back of the patient's throat, it can be retrieved. And the best way to handle an emergency is to prevent it. Access openings. After the rubber dam is in place, the next step is to create the access opening. This allows us to remove the infected pulp and locate the nerve canal openings. And so that picture there is just kind of a view of the inside of the tooth. They've already removed that infected pulp chamber, and those are the 3 nerve canals in that tooth there. File lubricant. So lubricant should be used on all hand and rotary files. ProLube is just a brand. They're single-use carpules, and they're opened by tearing off the end, and you'd use 1 for each root canal patient. Initial working lengths. After the pulp is removed, the Endo Explorer is used to help locate the canal openings. And so that right there is the Endo Explorer. It's got a couple pointed ends, and it's really helpful for finding those small nerve canal openings. Endo Explorer, remember that. All right, the first file used for most root canals will be the purple size 10 hand file. The white size 15 hand file is the next one in the sequence, and working length x-rays will often be taken with the white 15 file. Okay, so these are where we see our initial working lengths. This film is exposed with small files like the 10 and 15 in place to verify the length of each canal. Sometimes when we get to this point, we find we're too short or a little bit too long, and then small adjustments in length can be made before we move on to larger sizes. So this is a lower molar here, and it's got 3 nerve canals, and we can see the 3 files in there. Wave 1. So after working length is established, we can move on to larger size files. In the past, this was all done by hand, but now we have both rotary and reciprocating handpiece systems. Again, I'm going to go over what I personally use, and I personally use the Wave 1 reciprocating system, and it's pretty awesome. Okay, endomotor and handpiece. So this is the Tulsa 8-to-1 mini head contra angle handpiece. Basically what all that means is that the handpiece will operate at 1/8 the RPM of the motor. This just helps keep torque where it's at. Okay, and this is the endo motor, and just kind of shows you how everything works there with the foot pedal and power cord and whatnot. Okay, so the Wave 1 settings, this endo motor has specific presets for our Wave 1 system. When you turn it on, you preset to number 2, and you'll see that Wave 1 is displayed on the screen. Both the forward and reverse buttons will be lit up, which you can see down here. That's how you verify that everything's on the right settings, and that means that the reciprocating files will go both backwards and forwards rather than just rotating in one direction. This makes cleaning and shaping the canals a lot easier. Wave 1 file sizes. So there are 4 sizes of Wave 1 files, ranging from the smallest, which is the yellow file. That's a size 20, all the way up to the large white file, which is a size 45. Sometimes we only need to use 1 file size, while other times we may need to progress through a few of them. And these files are always single use. So after you use it on one patient, they're not to be sterilized. They're disposed of in the sharps container. Irrigation. It's a 3-step process. So after the canal is cleaned out, we want to irrigate and sterilize it. The first step in that process is sodium hypochlorite. This one only dissolves the organic material. It cannot dissolve the smear layer. After the sodium hypochlorite, we want to rinse very well with water. And then the third step in the irrigation is the Q-mix, which is a combination of EDTA and chlorhexidine. And what this does is it chelates calcium ions in dentin and removes the smear layer, which the sodium hypochlorite cannot do. All right, absorbent points. After finishing the irrigation process, the canals are rinsed again and then dried. We want to first dry with air, and that saves how many of these paper points we have to use, and then we correspond the color of the paper point with the color of the file that we used for the Wave 1 system. It will typically take at least 1 pack of paper points for each canal. And that's what they look like. Sealer. Sealer is used to fill any small spaces between the gutta percha and the canal wall. We only need a very small amount, about half the size of a pea. And the gutta percha, which is the root canal filling material, it is named for the Malaysian gutta percha tree that it originates from. And that's the tree, in case anybody was super curious. Gutta percha is both biologically inert and biocompatible, making it an ideal permanent endodontic filler. And the Wave 1 gutta percha are custom fitted to match the Wave 1 files. So if our final file size is the red primary one, we will use the primary red gutta percha, which makes it easy. All right. Some like it hot. So this instrument's called the glick. It has a plugger end and a paddle end, and it can be heated up to sear off the excess gutta percha. The plugger is then used to finish condensing the remaining gutta percha. Go big or go home. So some teeth have very large nerve canals. These are most commonly found in maxillary anterior teeth, so our upper front teeth of younger patients. The Wave 1 file system only goes up to the large white 45 size. So we've got large hand files and matching gutta percha for these cases. I've had cases go up to size 100, so a whole lot bigger than your typical nerve canal size. Case selection. This is probably the most important part of the root canal process, is deciding which cases to do and which ones to send out to the specialist. So major indications for referral include abnormal anatomy, calcified canals. Yeah, I guess that's basically it. Also patients, if you have a patient that's just very difficult, has a very small mouth and it's a back tooth that needs done, that's another good indication to send them to the specialist. But anyways, we have a few examples here. On the left, we're looking at tooth number 20, which is this premolar here. We're looking at 29, which is this premolar here. And we're looking once again at 29, which is this premolar here. And we're trying to decide which of these do we want to do and which ones do we want to send out. So number 20, this is a very normal looking nerve anatomy. It looks like a single straight canal, no problem. We're gonna keep that one in the office. Number 29, we've got a single canal here, and you're gonna see that it actually splits into two canals. This is a very challenging case. This is one that definitely we want to send to the endodontist. And then on the right, number 29, we've got a calcified canal. So if you look here on this tooth, we can see the canal in the center of the tooth. On this one, we can't see anything. So when canals calcify, they are very challenging to treat. And we're going to send that one to the endodontist. All right, so here's a recent case I did. There's a pre-op photo. So what we're looking at tooth number 3. It's on the upper right molar. It has a very large existing filling. I know it's tough to see the x-ray that I transferred here. There's a good sized cavity that's underneath that filling, and that cavity is into the pulp horn of the pulp chamber here. So that tooth did need a root canal, and so we treated it. This tooth had 4 nerve canals. You can see 3 of them. This one's kind of overlapped here. So we took the old filling out, we took the cavity out, treated it, and then it got a crown on top of that. All right, guys, so that was the clinical portion. I really do enjoy root canals. I think they're a lot of fun to do. They're probably a little more boring to listen about, but I do appreciate you guys listening. I know that you needed some clinical portion tonight. The next part of my procedure or of my presentation is the part that I'm really excited about. This is about starting a dental practice. It's just a quick intro into how I got here and just kind of some of the main steps that you take along the way. This has kind of been my dream for a long time, so I'm excited to share with you guys what I've learned here. So how did I get here? I would say the first thing, honestly, is podcasts and books. When I was in public health in Ohio, I was driving about 1 hour and 15 minutes each way on my commute. So I was in the car about 2.5 hours a day. I listened to a lot of dental and business podcasts. And that's what really started to get me more interested in owning my own practice. I also started reading some books, mostly on business, some on dental and dental practices. Dental Facebook groups, there's great communities out there, just kind of like how you guys are as pre-dent students. I'm connected with a lot of different dentists across the country on Facebook. My failed acquisition. So as I mentioned, when we first moved to Tampa, I was supposed to buy a practice. I had gotten the whole way through the process, and we were actually getting ready to sign the deal when the sellers got cold feet and backed out. So that took about 6 months to get there. When they decided to back out, that was May of 2019. We said, crap, what are we going to do? We're still moving to Florida. We had already sold our house. We had already signed a lease on a house down here. So in June of 2019, I decided we're going to move to Florida anyways. I'm going to start my own practice, and I'll take a job as an associate down here while I start that journey. So when I started in June of 2019, I thought it would take me about a year to start my practice, and 18 months later, we're still getting ready to open. So it certainly is a journey, and that's just my logo and my practice, the Dental Boutique of West Chase. So I talked about podcasts and books. I just had a couple recommended that I really liked. Some of the books that I found super helpful, not just for dentistry and business, but just kind of in life. The Obstacle is the Way, the author's last name's Holiday of that one. It just talks all about how we face adversity and how we just really need to make the best of all those situations. The Fred Factor, Mark Sanborn. It's all about service and how no matter what our job is, just going above and beyond in customer service. And it was really cool. The E-Myth, that one's all about business by Michael Gerber. Another great read. And Relentless by Tim Grover. He was the coach of many famous NBA players, including Michael Jordan, and just really talks about that competitive drive. So 4 fantastic books. I highly recommend all of them. Podcasts that I found really helpful. I would say the number 1 dental podcast, if you guys want to start listening, is Shared Practices. Fantastic. They have lots of dental students and even pre-dents listening. Bulletproof Dental is another very good one, and the Dentalpreneur. So 3 good places to start if you guys want to start listening to podcasts. You want to start a practice, but where to start? So you have to bring on the right team. Some people do try to start their own practice kind of on their own. A lot of, do it yourself. It's very dangerous. Not something I would recommend. There's a time and a place for experts, and I really do think this is one of them. So you want to find, an attorney, a CPA, commercial real estate agent, equipment reps, contractor, lender. You may even want to bring on consultants to help you start the practice. For most of these things, you really do want to find dental specific. You want to ask them, have you worked with dentists before? How many dentists do you work with? Most of these people on my team work primarily or only with dentists. And they've all been really, really helpful along the way. And this is me and my fiance, Dana, just in our brand new space right after we signed the lease. Will banks lend to me? So banks typically look for some work experience after dental school. They don't typically like to lend a startup loan to brand new graduates. Not always the case. There are some ways around it, but typically 1 to 2 years. Liquidity, save as much as you can those first couple of years. The more you have in savings, the more likely the bank is to give you a loan. Minimal debt. So they know you're going to have student loan debts. I know that they keep growing, bigger and bigger. Some schools, you come out with, I think, almost $600,000 these days in debt. I was at almost $400,000 when I graduated. That's okay. The banks understand that. And honestly, I would say one thing that I learned when I first got out of dental school, I tried to pay my student loans down very aggressively. In hindsight, I kind of wish I hadn't. While you don't want that debt to keep accumulating interest, if you don't pay it off as quickly, you have more in savings, the banks look at that more favorably. So even though I had paid down some of it, they didn't really care that much about that. Business plan. Do you have a plan to make your startup practice successful, or are you just kind of on a whim? Hey, I want to start my own practice. Banks do like to see a written business plan. Typically, these are 20, 30-page documents. This was something that I actually had consultants help me create, but that was really helpful in securing my loan. Good credit score. So that's something you guys can work on now. Everything you can possibly do to keep your credit up. The higher it is, the more likely you're going to get the big loan for the startup practice. Finding the perfect location. This is a trick question because there is no perfect location. There's a lot of factors to consider. Livability, commute time. So this is the parking lot of my brand new practice. We are just outside of Tampa, Florida. My practice is about 2 miles from my house. So, we didn't originally say that it had to be this close, but we looked at a lot of different areas. And I had mentioned I had been commuting an hour and 15 minutes for a couple of years. And even at my associateship here, it had been about 45 minutes. And quite frankly, I was just sick of commuting. So I'm really excited to have a commute that I could ride my bike to if I wanted. So that was a big factor for us as we looked at real estate was my commute time. Competition, obviously if you go into an area where there's 10 dentists within a quarter mile, you're going to have a tougher time attracting patients. Demographics, what does the demographics of your area look like? Is the area growing? Are people leaving? What is the median income? Things like that. Do you have niches, target patients that you think would work well with you? Visibility. So we're right along the main road that runs right through my town here, which is pretty cool. We are in a big medical complex, so we don't have quite the same visibility as if we were a standalone building. But still, we really like the location. And then available space, that's probably the biggest thing. I see some startups try to squeeze into the smallest space possible because it's cheaper. That's all they could find. But you want to think about the future. And if you spend all this time and money and resources and stomach lining building your dream practice, and then you realize 2 years down the line that you outgrew it already, that's not really an ideal situation. So, okay. So you found your almost perfect space. Now what? So the next step, once you find that space, is lease negotiations. And you definitely want to have a healthcare specific commercial real estate agent help you with this. Do not, under any circumstances, try to negotiate your own lease. Once again, this is something that you want to leave to the experts. Mine was able to get me a lot of very favorable conditions, including about 34 months of free rent. So landlords will often be very motivated to sign a lease with a dentist. You know, they're typically very good clients. And if you have the right players on your team, they will help you negotiate a very favorable lease. Once you've kind of negotiated the terms, before you actually sign the lease, you definitely need to have a legal review. Once again, an attorney who has worked with dentists and dental leases before would be very helpful. You sign your lease and then you fund your loan. And that's when you start paying out everybody that you need to. And that's also when you do the floor plan design. So, you don't really want to do the design until the lease is signed. Otherwise, there may be something that in the end just doesn't work out. And then permitting, once the floor plan is designed, you submit for permitting. That was the biggest delay in our process. That and just finding the space, it took us about 8 months to find our space, and it took us about 6 months for permitting. So that was a big chunk of those 18 months that it's been since I decided to do this. Basic floor plan considerations. Who do you want to have design the floor plan? My one recommendation is definitely someone who has designed many dental floor plans in the past. I would also recommend staying away from the dental vendors. A lot of times they will offer to design you a free or low cost floor plan. The problem is if it's a dental equipment rep that's designing it, they're going to put as much expensive dental equipment and fixings as possible, especially like expensive cabinetry. Less is more. When you're designing this, once again, my recommendation, limit things like cabinets as much as possible. You'll be able to get more operatories in the space, which is really the most important thing, because the more operatories you have, the more treatment rooms you have, the more room you have for growth. You're also going to spend a lot less money because cabinets are very expensive. And if you have a lot of cabinets, things just get thrown in them, and that's when you run out of supplies and don't even realize it. Office flow. So you want to think about, how are the patients going to flow through your office? How's your team going to flow through the office? A good recommendation is to have the sterilization area somewhere very central, because team members have to go in and out of there constantly. Second entrance. So this picture right here, this is actually has since been cut out. They made a second door for me. And this is in the very back of the practice. And this way I can walk right in and right in the office. It's kind of tough when you only have one front entrance and all the team and yourself included has to come in and out of the waiting room area every time. And then you also want to plan for the future. So that's where I was saying, even if you think it's enough space now, in the future, you may want to bring on associate dentists. So just really make sure that you're giving yourself enough treatment rooms, enough space to grow into. Designing the patient experience. So I just said waiting room, and that's actually a no-no for me. What we want to call it is the patient lounge. Patients hate waiting. Everyone hates waiting. I hate waiting. I'm probably not the most patient person in the world. So, why call this room the waiting room? That just sets a bad tone from the start. So your patient lounge, you want to have, different amenities there. We personally are going to have an espresso machine, rather than just a plain old Keurig. We want it to feel more like a trendy coffee shop or a boutique hotel. We don't want to have just all the medical chairs in a line. That's what really gives patients feelings of anxiety. So if you make it feel more like a comfortable, welcoming space, they're going to be happier to be there. Kid friendly is big, unless you really don't want to treat kids. When the kids come to your practice, that's when the whole family comes. So, having a kid-friendly practice can be really helpful. We're actually going to have retro video games. So things like Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, which are the games I grew up playing, and I'm really excited to have them at my office. We're going to have little toy dispenser machines with little tooth tokens, so that when kids come in, we're going to show them the toy machines and say, if you have a good visit, you're going to get this token and you get to pick a toy. Things like that, parents really appreciate. I'm designing a handcrafted comfort menu. So that's things like, the softest blankets I could find, noise canceling headphones, heated neck wraps, just anything that's going to make the whole experience more enjoyable. And then the last thing is technology. Patients really like technology. It makes the practice seem more cutting edge, more modern. And it doesn't have to be super expensive, $100,000 dental technology always. It can be as simple as putting a few TVs in each of the treatment rooms and having little intraoral cameras and things like that. So this picture here, this is my cabinetry for my treatment rooms, and I actually designed this, which was my first time ever designing cabinetry, and it was pretty cool. Again, I'm trying to minimize the amount of cabinets I have, so I try to make this as efficient as possible. So that was kind of a cool process for me. Building your brand. So, I think marketing and building your brand is probably the most important aspect of a startup dental practice. If you don't do these things, you're going to get to opening day and you're going to, cut the red ribbon and have the confetti, and then you'll be sitting there in the office waiting for the phone to ring. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. How can you build your brand? Things like social media, Instagram, Facebook, ground marketing, just going around to local businesses. And that's what the B2B means, is business to business. So, actually offering things to businesses and saying, because you're a local business, I want to offer you this, for your employees at my office and things like that. Community involvement, any way you can get involved with schools, local sports teams, charities, things like that. SEO website. So you want to start building your website. You want to have your website built months before you open and start working on your Google rankings, your SEO, so that when people search dentist near me or dentist this town, that you come up near the top of those rankings. That's huge these days. And then local associations, those can be things like Rotary clubs, chambers of commerce, just anything where you can get involved and get your name out there. And this picture here, we did a gift basket giveaway. This is really cool. We got about 50 potential patients who gave us, phone numbers and email addresses to contact in the future because of this giveaway. So, and we did that on Instagram and Facebook. Who to hire and when? So when you're a startup, you definitely want to hire one front office. They're going to be responsible for greeting patients with a big smile, running insurance verification and submitting insurance claims, scheduling patients, answering the phones, things like that. You're going to have one dental assistant. They're going to help you in the back, as you're doing treatment. They're going to help change rooms and take x-rays and sterilize supplies, things like that. Some startups, I would say a lot of startups don't hire a hygienist off the bat. That's because hygienists are the most expensive employees to hire. You're going to have the highest overhead there. And if you're one of those practices that doesn't market and doesn't brand yourself, and you get to opening day and you don't have any patients, then the hygienist is just going to be sitting there with nothing to do. So, a lot of practices wait a few months, some wait 6 months, some wait a year until they're busy enough. I am planning on hiring one from the start. And for a couple of reasons, personally, my belief is that I want to provide a consistent experience to my patients. I think having the same hygienist there doing the dental cleanings from day one is just really important. Also, it frees up my time to do dental treatment. So if I'm doing all the cleanings and dental treatment comes in the door, I can't do it because my schedule's booked with the cleanings. And I guess the third thing is, honestly, I don't really like doing cleanings, so I'd rather pay somebody else to do it for me. That's about it. You want to start the hiring process about 2 months before you open. It can take a long time to find really good candidates, to really build your culture from the ground up. And you don't want to be scrambling last minute and feel forced to hire somebody who's not a good fit. And then you want to bring your team on about 2 weeks before you open. So, you definitely want to provide some training and kind of help get the office set up and do some dry runs before you actually open the doors and start seeing patients. And this is that same space I showed you before after we got all of our framing up there, which was really exciting to see. Plan for the best, prepare for the worst. So, as I mentioned, I really am doing what I can to try to make sure that our practice is busy from the time we open. But I'm also prepared that it may not be as busy as I hope. So, when you're planning your startup, you really want to have an associate job as a dentist somewhere. to pay the bills, so you're not dipping into savings too early. I just cut down to part-time at my associate about 2 weeks ago. So I went from full-time to 2 days a week. And then even once we open my practice, we're going to be open for 3 days, and I'm still planning to work at that associate job those other 2 days. If things go really well and we get really busy, we'll open my practice more, and I'll stop working at my associateship. But it's nice to have that as a backup. I had mentioned savings. I mean, that's important for the bank. The main reason that it's important to the bank is they want to make sure that if things aren't going as well as you hope at your practice in the beginning, if things are slow to start, that you have enough in savings, because you're going to have overhead costs with your business. Credit. So, within reason, you want to take out as, credit cards and things like that, because once your business opens, it's going to be harder to take out a lot of credit. But if you do it beforehand while you have a good paying job, that's going to make it, so that if you get in a pinch, you do have credit you can use. And then your loan. Some people will try to take out as little as possible for a startup loan. My advice is to do the opposite. Honestly, when you're thinking about a 10 or 15-year loan, the amount of difference it's going to make if you have a successful dental practice is insignificant. But if you don't take out enough money and you get in a jam, it can be really, really difficult to get more at that point in time. So, and that's just right outside our suite. And that just got put up the other day, which I was really excited about. Is it worth the grind? So, this whole startup process, like I said, it's taken a lot longer than I expected. It basically takes up all of my free time. On the weekends, I'd love to be playing golf, but I really am. I'm just working on everything that needs to be done to get this practice ready to open. But I really do think it's worth it. One of the best things is you get to design it with intention. I'm working with my contractor, with my architect, every single step of the way, with my patients in mind, with my team in mind, with my family in mind. So that's just really cool to build something from the ground up. Freedom. So, one of the cool things is you get to set your own work schedule. You get to decide what days, what hours you want to work. You get to decide when you want to shut the office down and take a vacation. And then in the future, you'll also have hopefully financial freedom, which is something that's really tough even as a good paying associate job to achieve. Growth. When you open your own practice and things go well, you have the opportunity to open more practices, to expand your practice. Once again, if you take a job, with a corporation as a dentist, it's a lot tougher to do things like that. Impact, once again, I talked about community involvement, and when you do a startup dental practice, you have the opportunity to really have an impact on your community, which is really cool. I like this quote a lot. It kind of reminds me of the grind, but discipline is just choosing between what you want now and what you want the most. This is kind of the last part of my story, and this is honestly my favorite part. We are launching a program called No Hungry Pets, and we're partnering with the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. So, Dana and I decided that while we're really excited to open this practice, we want more than just a successful business. We want to have that impact on our community. And so we decided to commit that for every new patient that comes to our practice, we're going to donate 50 meals to hungry animals at the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. So our dog Samson, and I will tell you, this is actually not Samson, this is Ruthie, but our dog Samson, he's a rescue. We got him about 3.5 years ago. When we got Samson, he was really malnourished. He was really underweight. He was missing patches of hair. And we found out his story. He had actually been surrendered to the shelter twice. And he was only 18 months old. So he had already had 2 different owners. His most recent owner was, he was one of 12 dogs. So as a little pup, he just wasn't getting enough food there. And now Samson, he's a happy and healthy 4-year-old, and he really brings so much joy to our lives. So we couldn't think of a better way to have an impact in our community than with our No Hungry Pets program. And like I said, as excited as I am for all the other benefits of having a startup practice, I think this is probably my favorite part. So, all right, guys, that is it for my presentation. I invite all of you to follow our journey to opening. On social media, we're posting a lot of pictures and videos and things like that. My Instagram is at dr.andrewvallo. Our Facebook is at the Dental Boutique West Chase, and our website is westchasedentalboutique.com. So that's pretty much it from us here right now. I'll open the floor. Any questions that you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Vallo, for that, for taking the time to be with us today and for preparing this presentation. It was really intriguing to learn about your experiences and the logistics that goes into starting a practice. And for everyone watching, be sure to follow Dr. Vallo. And with that said, we have a few questions in the chat, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. So the first question is, have you ever considered specializing? And if you didn't, why did you decide not to specialize?
That's a great question, Tiffany. So I had mentioned that I had done my summer temp in orthodontics office. So when I was in high school and when I was in college and when I first got to dental school, I thought that I wanted to specialize in orthodontics. I really wanted to just follow in the footsteps of that doctor I had worked for. Once I got to dental school, I realized that I really enjoyed a lot of the aspects of dentistry. So, I mentioned in today's presentation that I enjoy root canals. I enjoy surgical aspects like extractions. I enjoy cosmetic aspects like, cosmetic fillings and veneers and crowns. And so, when you specialize, you kind of limit what you can do. And so if there's something, it's not a decision you have to make before dental school. It's something where you can kind of test the waters. But if you get there and you decide, oh my gosh, I really love this and I kind of hate doing this, then it's a great idea to specialize. It can be really rewarding. I'm very thankful for the specialists. I've already made some very good friends in the Tampa community that are specialists. One particularly who's a periodontist. So it's really good to have those connections, because there are cases, even like I said, with root canals that I feel very comfortable doing. There's some tough cases that I would not want to touch myself. So it's great to have them there. The other thing that's cool is you don't have to decide to specialize in dental school. I had a really good friend from dental school who came out. He actually did public health like I did for 2 or 3 years, and he decided he wanted to go back and specialize and be an endodontist. So he is actually just finishing up his program this spring, I think. And so you can always make the decision in the future too.
Thank you, Dr. Vallo. Okay, so the next question is, you mentioned podcasts. Where can the podcast be found?
Great question. If you are like most of society and have an iPhone, I think you have the Apple Play Store or something. I don't know. There's some Apple store where you can download the podcast app. If you have a Samsung like me, there's here, I can even show you guys. It's called Podcast Player. So I don't know how well you can see this, but it's like this little icon there. But if you just go on your phone and search in whatever your app store is for podcast, you'll find an app that you can download these podcasts on.
Sounds good. Thank you. So if you don't mind answering, so how did you manage your debt from dental school?
No, that's a great question. So like I had mentioned, when I first came out, I went into public health. And so the cool thing is when you go into public health, you have the opportunity to sign contracts. So I signed a 2-year contract. And because I was providing dental care to areas that really needed it, they do provide scholarships. So typically it's like $50,000 for 2 years, and that can be used to pay off your student loans. So I basically took all of that money and paid down my student loans with that, and that helped a little bit. And I was also paying probably more than I should have been every month. I was pretty aggressive the first 2 years or so, and then I started thinking about practice ownership. And as I started to talk to the experts, I found out that I wanted to be saving as much as possible. And it's tough when you're first out of dental school to save money and also pay down your student loans. So that's when I kind of backed off, and I put my payments more at the minimum. It's a big debt. It's scary, but if the fastest way to pay off your student loans is to become a practice owner. The earning potential is just so much higher. So
Thank you for that. Next question is, how did you find individuals to be a part of your team in opening a practice?
So as far as finding what I'm calling my rock star team members, it's kind of like what I'm doing with my marketing and branding is that I'm just trying to put it out everywhere I can. I actually made a video talking about our practice, our vision, how we want to redefine the patient experience, how we want to take dental care to the next level. And I put this video out on Facebook and Instagram. And just from that video, I got a number of applicants, but I also posted on all the standard job sites, Indeed and Craigslist, and there's a Facebook jobs now and LinkedIn. And so I first posted our jobs about 2 weeks ago, and I think I've gotten about 75 applications in those first 2 weeks. So we've had a really great response. I would say the probably the trickier question is, how do you manage all those applications? And so that's kind of a process that I've figured out as well. And you basically try to find applicants that seem like they have, I would recommend at least a year or two of experience working in a dental office. Once your practice is mature, you can bring in people with great personalities, because I really believe in trying to hire for attitude versus hiring for qualifications. So you can bring in people with great personalities that don't have any dental experience, but as a startup practice, because you're only going to have a few team members, you really need to bring in team members that have been there before and just really know what they're doing. So I kind of rolled out some applicants right away. And then from there, I made a pre-interview questionnaire that basically explains some of our expectations as a startup. And that also helped weed out some applicants. And so I've done about, I would say, between 15 and 20 interviews so far. And I think I've got about 5 more I plan to do. And then I'll go to the second round interviews. And I'll probably only invite about 10 potential applicants to that second round interview. So it's a process. I mean, I'm not going to lie, hiring has kind of taken over my life the last 2 weeks. But I think it's one of the most important parts, because you can't have a great dental practice without a great team. So.
Thank you, Dr. Vallo. So the next question is, how do you balance working at your practice, from being an associate, and your family life?
That is a very good question, and the answer is, it's not easy. You just kind of do it. I will say that we don't have kids yet, which is probably helpful. I had it in my mind that I wanted to start my practice before we had kids, because people do it. I know friends in the dental community that have 3 or 4 kids. Actually, some that had 3 or 4 kids in dental school, but then also go and start their practice. And you're making sacrifices. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Up until I cut down to part-time 2 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it was, I was working full-time at my associate job, and I was spending nights and weekends doing all the marketing, picking out my equipment, working with my floor plan designs, working with my contractor, working with the bank. It's kind of crazy. So right now I only work Mondays and Thursdays, and yesterday I got home from 10 hours of seeing patients, and I had about 25 emails that were marked as urgent, needed my response. So you come home, you're exhausted, you don't feel like doing it, but you just make yourself sit down and you do it. And that's kind of where that quote about discipline came in. There are days where I'm very motivated and I wake up and I'm like, man, I can't wait to get this stuff done. And there are other days where it's the last thing I want to do, but you have to make yourself do it, if you want to get your practice open and do it the way that you want to. So.
That's true. Thank you. So the next question is kind of 2 in 1. So what were the pros and cons of Ohio State Dental School, and what did you look for when deciding what dental school to attend?
So I guess the pros of Ohio State is, it was pretty well renowned for some of its programs. does offer, I believe, at this point, just about all of the specialty programs, which some schools don't. It was pretty well known for its oral surgery program, so that was something really cool. Is that we got a lot of experience, extracting teeth and things like that in dental school, more than some other schools do. It also has an externship program where while you're still in dental school, they send you out and have you kind of be student externs in different practices. Some schools do that, some don't. But I mean, I would say I learned more during those externships than I probably did during a lot more time spent in the dental school. So, it just really got us out in the real world while we were still in school, which was cool. The other big pro, and honestly, one of the biggest deciding factors was that Ohio State is, Ohio is one of the few states that allows you to gain in-state residency after 1 year. And so my recommendation is, we're talking about managing your student debt. I try to manage it ahead of time. Again, I still came out with a significant amount, but Ohio State was the least expensive of the 4 or 5 schools I got into. So, that if you're kind of torn between a couple schools and there's no big determining factor, I would definitely go with the one where you're going to take on less debt. The biggest con of Ohio State is that I had went to Michigan State, so it was really hard going from Michigan State to Ohio State.
Thank you, Dr. Vallo. And the next question is kind of more specific to like business advice, I guess. So one of the things that you mentioned about like how you promoted your practice was increasing your SEO. So this person's asking, how do you specifically like increase it?
No, that's a really good question. Before I started this process, I knew absolutely nothing about websites, SEO, Google rankings, anything like that. I guess a little bit maybe from some of the podcasts I listened to, but I'm not a computer savvy person. I had to ask Sherry how to do my screen sharing when we first started this presentation, if that tells you anything. So what is SEO? How do you manage it? SEO is search engine optimization. It's when someone types these, things into Google, where do you come up in the rankings? Ways to increase it are having a great website, having a website that's mobile compatible, so that works well on phones and other devices as well as on computers. Having patient reviews, having your website updated frequently. So, you can have a great website, but if you never do any updates to it, you're going to start moving down the rankings because of that. So there's certain things you can absolutely do on your own. Having links to your website on other people's pages is really helpful. If you get any press releases with the media and they put your website on an article, that's really helpful. But I also brought in an expert. So, I found a local website and SEO company. And so they're actually working with me right now to help work on our rankings. When our website was first built and you search dentists in West Chase, I think we were like in the 50s in our ranking, and now we're at like number 8 or 9. So we've moved up a lot. My hope is to be somewhere within the top 5 by the time we open in the next couple months here. So
thank you. Next question is, what would you say was the most difficult aspect of starting your own private practice?
I think the most difficult aspect, honestly, is decision fatigue. So I'm a little bit like of an OCD type of person. I feel like I need to make the absolute best decision in everything I do. If we go out to dinner, I have to look at all the reviews and find the best restaurant. I don't want to waste my time going to a restaurant that sucks. And so with starting your own private practice, there are like thousands of decisions you have to make. And so in the beginning, I was trying to apply my normal OCD-ness to every single decision. And one is you just don't have enough time to do that. But two, if you spend a day thinking about 10 things and you put that much effort into all those decisions, your brain just shuts off. Decision fatigue is real. So I would say that was probably the hardest part. The other hardest part is realizing that you cannot possibly be in control of everything that happens. So, once again, with making decisions, I also feel like I try to plan things out very well, and time things out very well. But with our permitting, we submitted for our permits this past June, so June 2020, and we were told it should take about 3 months, and it ended up taking 6 months. So I try to time everything out so that our practice would actually open in December, and now our practice is supposed to open in March. So that was really hard for me at first, and it would really stress me out. I would lose some sleep over it. But then you just start to kind of learn just to let go and just say, this is what it is. I planned for it the best I possibly could. I have no control over the situation. So, I need to work with it, and it's just kind of like taking that moment to pause between the stimulus and your reaction and just saying, okay, this is what we're dealing with now, and this is how I'm going to deal with it. So that's kind of what I've learned throughout the process. But
Thank you, Dr. Vallo. So this question is kind of going back to what we previously talked about, but how did you figure out what schools will allow you to gain like in-state residency after 1 year?
Thinking back on it, I'm pretty sure Ohio was the only one of the schools that I got into that did. I don't remember exactly how I figured that out. It may have been talking to students at those schools. It may have been from online forums. It may have been information from the schools themselves. But one way or another, I figured out, okay, if I go to Ohio State, my first year I pay out-of-state residency, but as long as they make you jump through a few hoops, like you can only leave the state for so many days your first year there to kind of gain residency and things like that. But once you jump through those hoops and gain residency, then the next 3 years you pay the in-state price, which is a pretty decent savings. So.
Thank you. Next one is about school advice. So what would you recommend to strengthen dental school applications and increase your DAT score?
That's a great question. So, as I mentioned, it is very competitive. When I got to undergrad, I already had my mindset like, this is something that I absolutely wanted to do. So I was dead set, on keeping my grades up. So like GPA was a big part of it. You definitely want to be involved. Anything that you can do, like that has a position title, schools definitely look favorably on that. I was in a fraternity in undergrad, and I was our philanthropy chairman. So, I was in charge of our charity events. I was our recruitment chairman. And I was also our academics chairman. So just little things like that you can do to kind of set yourself apart and show that you take leadership positions. That's definitely helpful. Shadowing, being part of pre-dental organizations is definitely huge. If you can get a leadership position in the pre-dental organization at your school, that's big. As far as increasing your DAT scores go, I would say, obviously the DAT is a very important part of your application. So, spend the time, don't just plan that you're going to take it in a few weeks and start trying to cram. Try to start studying 6 months ahead of time. And treat it like it's the most important final that you've ever taken, and really just put in the hours and sacrifice, because, once you get that good score on the DAT, you're going to have a much better chance of getting into dental school. So.
Thank you, Dr. Vallo. So for our final question today, what was the most challenging aspect of dental school for you?
I think the most challenging aspect of dental school for me, honestly, was my time management. When I was an undergrad, I was a sciences major. I actually had a pretty light course load because I brought a lot of AP credits into college. So it was one of those things where I probably could have graduated in 3 years if I had pushed it. But in my mind, I said, I want to get the best grade point average I can. So I only took about 12 credits a semester. I didn't really have a lot of hands-on labs and things like that. I didn't have a lot of projects. It was just studying for exams. I've always been a pretty good test taker. So undergrad was honestly fairly easy for me. And when I got to dental school, your time's just a lot more planned out. You have all of the lecture classes, but you also have all of the hands-on classes. Your pre-clinic classes, your lab classes. So just trying to manage my time and trying to find enough time to study outside of class and still keep up with going to the gym and other social activities I wanted to do. It was a big change for me from undergrad. So I feel like I kind of had to grow up a little bit when I got there and just become better at time management. I guess the other hardest part was all of a sudden you're learning this whole new language. I mean, dentistry, teeth numbers, surfaces of teeth, just all the stuff that you really didn't have anything on in undergrad or high school or anything that prepared you for it. So it kind of is like taking a new language, but once you start to get it down, it's really exciting to learn more about it. So
Thank you, Dr. Vallo, for your time today and answering all of our questions. And also, thank you to everyone who joined us today. Just before we end today's session, I just want to let everyone know that the link for the quiz will be posted in our GroupMe. And yeah, just thank you again, Dr. Vallo, for being here with us, and we hope you have a great night.
Thank you guys so much for having me here. Honestly, it was an honor, and I wish everybody the best of luck. If anybody has any questions, if you have questions about the startup process, if you have questions about my lecture, if you have questions about dental school, I am always happy to answer them. I feel like so many people have helped me get to where I'm at that I want to pay it forward any way I can. So I believe my email address was on the front of the lecture, but Sherry also has one of my email addresses. So, you guys are welcome to share that with anybody that wants to ask questions after the lecture. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye. Have a great night.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dr.